Okay, well, welcome to the second annual Malcolm X Justice and Peace Lecture Series at Minneapolis Community and Technical College. My name is Dr. Matthew Palumbo. I teach philosophy and global studies here at MCTC since 2002. The Malcolm X Justice Series was created 2 years ago by students and faculty here who believed that African American, African, and Muslim activists who struggle daily for justice and peace are often known for their activism, but not as much for their intellectual contributions to how we all think about justice in a sustainable world. And so the Malcolm X Justice and Peace Lecture Series was created to promote the intellectual traditions of African American, African, and Islamic authors and activists as they relate to contemporary issues of justice and peace. Malcolm X was not just a great activist, he was also a great intellectual as well. This is our fourth event. The Malcolm X Justice and Peace Lecture Series started this morning at 11 o'clock. We heard from some of our speakers on a presentation on Syria, a presentation on Egypt, a presentation on Somalia, and this evening, the topic for this evening is Global Living in an Age of Revolution, a forum on Palestine, Egypt, Syria, and Somalia. And so tonight we'll hear about 10 minutes from each of our special guests speaking personally about what it means to think and live and to act globally, to act beyond just our own national interests, our own personal context, and to engage the world as active citizens globally from right here and locally. So we will be a little experimental tonight. One of our guests is currently in and from Palestine, and as long as the Skype works for us, we will be hearing from him from Palestine, and Professor Nadia Mohammed has translated what he will be saying onto the right. And so when he speaks, his words will be translated English on the right, and he is joining us live and will be here for questions and answers. We've dedicated about an hour of our time tonight to you after 7:30 to ask questions to our speakers, and we hope that tonight you get to engage this just as much as hearing from our special guests. We will begin with one of our own professors here, Dr. Charles Watson. He will speak about Malcolm X as a global thinker, and then I will introduce the four other speakers for our evening tonight. Dr. Charles Watson is a professor of philosophy and global studies at Minneapolis Community and Technical College. Dr. Watson has a PhD in philosophy and humanities from Stanford University. He's the author of The Existential Imperative on the Material Production of Authenticity, and his academic research interests include 19th century philosophy and Black social thought. Dr. Watson teaches courses here at MCTC, including African American philosophy, ethics, introduction to philosophy, and the global studies course, race and culture. Let's welcome Dr. Charles Watson.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Do you want me to? Yeah. Good evening. Born May 19, 1925, in Omaha, Nebraska, Malcolm Little dropped out of school at the age of 15. He was sentenced to prison in 1946 at the age of 21. During his 7-year imprisonment, he became a convert to the Nation of Islam and its Black Muslim movement. His jail term ended in 1952. At the time, Malcolm X was 28. Malcolm was with the Nation of Islam from 1952 until 1964. He spent 12 years as a leader in the Black Muslim movement, withdrawing from involvement in 1964. After this seismic break or defining separation, he made 2 trips to Africa and the Middle East. 3 months after his return to the United States, on February 21, 1965, Malcolm X was assassinated in New York City. He was 40 years old. On April 13, 1964, Malcolm X left the United States on his first extended trip abroad. Before returning on May 21, he visited Egypt, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Ghana, Morocco, and Algeria. He made the pilgrimage to Mecca that every Muslim seeks to complete, entitling him to the use of al-Hajj in his name. During this period, Malcolm developed a new, non-religious movement born under the name the Organization of Afro-American Unity to promote and work for Black freedom. June and July 1964, during a tour of 14 countries, Malcolm X spoke at the African Summit to heads of state about the plight and predicament of Black folk in America. Malcolm urged support for the Negro struggle in the United States and requested help in bringing Black liberation efforts to the attention of the United Nations. I want to examine Malcolm's political thinking when framed as a standpoint epistemology. Otherwise stated, I want to investigate the alteration of vantage or a foundational shift, namely the perspective of Malcolm X from abroad, as well as his frame of reference, Malcolm's subject position and worldview after his return. From abroad after his return. In statements made during the last 3 months of his life, Malcolm X affirms, quote, I believe in political action, yes, any kind of political action, whatever kind of action is necessary. When you hear me say, by any means necessary, I mean exactly that. I believe in anything that is necessary to correct unjust conditions, political, economic, social, political, economic, social, physical, anything that's necessary. I believe in it as long as it's intelligently directed and designed to get results. But I don't believe in getting involved in any kind of political action or other kind without sitting down and analyzing the possibilities of success or failure, end quote. He asserts, I'm for whatever gets results. I'm for anything that they're involved in that gets meaningful results for the masses of our people, end quote. He states, whenever our people are ready to take any kind of action necessary to get results, they'll get results. They'll never get results as long as they play by the ground rules laid down by the power structure downtown. They have to organize and become involved in well-coordinated action, which will involve any means necessary to bring about complete elimination of the conditions that exist, conditions that are actually criminal, not only unjust, but criminal, end quote. As a pragmatic consequentialist, Malcolm X clearly and distinctly utilized the famous dictum most closely associated with his political thinking, by any means necessary. I want to offer 2 senses of the necessary that are grounded in the vantage of Malcolm from abroad, as well as his frame of reference after his return. The first sense is the necessity to end the brutality and the suffering experienced every day by people of color. This first sense requires an accurate portrait of a people's plight and predicament, and it demands the necessity of intervention, the necessity of independent African nations to trumpet and champion the Afro-American liberation struggle before the United Nations. To Malcolm's eye, human rights were being violated daily by the racism of American imperialists. The second sense is a question about what means, what tools, instruments, activities, resources, strategies, tactics are necessary to achieve and accomplish the final end, which is a maximizing function, a utility principle that seeks, quote, To elevate our freedom struggle above the domestic level of civil rights, we intend to internationalize it by placing it at the level of human rights. Our freedom struggle for human dignity is no longer confined to the domestic jurisdiction of the United States government, end quote. I want to conclude by elaborating several precepts or a framework of belief rooted in Malcolm's standpoint epistemology regarding any means necessary. That is, the available stock of unavoidable alternatives. Any means the necessity of placing our problem on the world stage, internationalize it, broaden the scope of our own view, and come back to educate the movement we represent. Malcolm's injunction is to internationalize the black man's problem and make it not a Negro problem or an American problem, but a world problem, a problem for humanity. Any means working with any group genuinely interested in solving the problems of the Negro collectively. Malcolm's exhortation is to work with anyone, with any group, no matter what their color is, as long as they are genuinely interested in taking the type of steps necessary to bring an end to the injustices that black people in this country are afflicted by. Any means calling upon leaders to submerge their differences and find areas of agreement wherein we can work in unity on common objectives for the common good of all Africans. Lifted above civil rights to the level of human rights, a people's plight and predicament are internationalized. Internationalizing it entails interrelation and interdependence, making the submergence of difference necessary. I would note the clear tension between interrelation and interdependence, which presuppose a binding medium or a theory of collective identity, in contradistinction to heterogeneity, hybridity, or intersectionality. Any means welded together, bound by the ties that bind. There's nothing we couldn't accomplish. Such solidarity is cemented by Malcolm's imperative to strongly believe that African problems are our problems and our problems are African problems. Our problems are your problems are our problems. For the established order and powers of the status quo, an organization of African and Afro-American unity generates apprehension, negative propaganda, and a strategy of dismemberment. Negative propaganda amounts to the view that black people in Africa are not interested in the plight and predicament of black people in America. Malcolm writes from Lagos, Nigeria in May of 1964, quote, "Despite Western propaganda to the contrary, our African brothers and sisters love us and are happy to learn that we also are awakening from our long sleep and are developing strong love for them," end quote. A strategy of disassociation is the effort to convince most Africans that the American Negro is in no way identified with Africa, and that the African would be foolish to involve himself in the problems of the American Negroes. In conclusion, writing from Accra, Ghana in May of 1964, Malcolm invites all African Americans to become an integral part of the world's Pan-Africanists. Malcolm implores, quote, "Though we might remain in America physically, while fighting for the benefits the Constitution guarantees us, we must return to Africa philosophically and culturally and develop a working unity in the framework of Pan-Africanism." Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charles Watson. I hope that inspired. Have the questions for Dr. Watson in your mind, write them down, and we'll have an opportunity toward the end to ask questions. I'd like now to introduce our four speakers who we've each asked to give about 10 minutes thoughts on what it means to think and to live globally. I'll introduce all four of them now. First, from Palestine, Ezdin Sami Kassab was born in Gaza, Palestine. He has a Bachelor's of Education from the University of Al-Quds and an MA in Political Science. He trains youth leaders in crisis management, negotiations, and legitimate politics as an activist in student politics. Ezra is a member of the Student Leadership and Representative Group to the Palestinian factions, as well as a representative of the National Committee of the Jerusalem International Foundation. He is a lecturer on good governance and Islam in the Faculty of Humanities at Dar al-Dawa and at the Innovation Center for Human Development in Rafah. He is a member of the Scientific Committee of the Conference of Palestinian Youth and the Arab Revolutions, as well as a member of the scientific community at the first conference of the Palestinian National Security. Also, Dr. Abdul Magoud Dardari is a prominent Egyptian parliamentarian under President Morsi. He is a founding member of the Parliamentarians Against the Coup, a member of Parliament for Luxor of the Freedom and Justice Party. He is a director of the Luxor Islamic Center for Global Dialogue and a member of the Freedom and Justice Party's Foreign Relations Committee. Dr. Abdul Magoud headed the Foreign Relations and Freedom and Justice Party first delegation to the White House and a key advisor to President Morsi. Dr. Dardari holds a PhD from the University of Pittsburgh and has taught English and Islamic studies in the United States and Egypt. Dr. Osama Abdu Irshaid is the founder and editor of El Mizan newspaper, a national newspaper published in Arabic. He is also a highly sought-after political analyst and commentator and lectures frequently on Middle East and American politics. He is a non-resident scholar at the Arab Center for Research and Policy Studies in Doha, Qatar, and authored and co-authored several books and articles in English and Arabic on issues relevant to the Middle East and its political climate. He's co-authored a study, Hamas, Ideological Rigidity and Political Flexibility, published by the United States Institute of Peace in 2009. Dr. Osama is a regular commentator on Palestine and Middle Eastern affairs on satellite networks such as Al Jazeera, Syrian TV, Al Alam, Abu Dhabi, and Al Ilwar TV. Dr. Osama completed his PhD at Loughborough University. Also, Maya Sheikh Salah is an attorney for Hennepin County here in the Twin Cities and a volunteer with various community organizations. She serves on the board of the Volunteer Lawyers Network and the Minnesota Peacebuilding Leadership Institute. As a former refugee, Maya has also always been passionate about justice, conflict resolution, mediation, and peace building. Ms. Sheikh Salah is a graduate of the University of Baltimore School of Law and lives in St. Paul with her sons. So first on the agenda, we will hear from Ezdin Sami Kassab from Palestine.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الدكتور ماثيو، الدكتورة نادية محمد، السيدة روزان، الدكتور عبد الموجود الدرديري، الدكتور أسامة برشيد، الأستاذة مايا، الحضور الكريم أكاديميين وطلابا وضيوفا، الكل باسمه ولقبه، تحية طيبة مباركة من قلب فلسطين، من قلب غزة المحاصرة. وقبل أن أبدأ بكلمتي، من الواجب الذي تعلمناه أن نشكر الذين دعونا لهذا المؤتمر لنشارك به ونبلغ رسالة فلسطين. فأشكر الدكتور ماثيو والدكتورة نادية محمد والسيدة روزان على السماح لنا بالمشاركة في هذا المؤتمر لنحدثكم من قلب غزة التي هي قلب فلسطين، قلب المعاناة الإنسانية في الوطن العربي. وتحية خاصة إلى الشباب الذين أنا منهم ومن جيلهم ومن عمرهم. أيها الشباب، أيها الحضور الكريم، إن شعبنا الفلسطيني العظيم الذي ما يزال يناضل ويقاوم ويجاهد منذ ما يقارب 100 عام من أجل تحرير وطنه واستعادة حقوقه والذي حافظ على الثوابت روحه ووجدانه، ولا يزال يؤمن بالعودة لوطنه وبتحرير القدس وإقامة دولته على كامل ترابه المقدس، والذي احتضن المقاومة ودفع في سبيلها مهج بنيه وأفئدتهم، وأبى أن ينخدع بالشعارات التي أرادت النيل من المقاومة وتصفيتها، وخرج عن بكرة أبيه يهتف للمقاومة ويسطر أروع صفحات الصمود، ويجدد ثقته بهذا الخط الثابت الأصيل، وهي أن فلسطين، كل فلسطين من بحرها إلى نهرها، لا حق لمحتل فيها، فهي حقنا الشرعي ونحن أهلها وسكانها الأصليون. أيها السادة أصدقائي الطلبة، إن مشاركتنا في هذا المؤتمر ليس لإلقاء الكلمات وتوضيح المواقف فحسب، وليس لتسجيل نشاط هنا وهناك، إنما من أجل ترسيخ حق المظلومين والمقهورين في يوم ذكرى رجل دعا للحرية والعدالة والسلام مثل السيد مالكوم إكس رحمه الله، ونحن الآن نعيش ذكراه الخالدة لمواقفه الشجاعة في إرساء قواعد الإنسانية. أصدقائي الطلبة، السادة الحضور الكريم، إن فلسطين منذ الامتداد البريطاني تتعرض للظلم والقهر، ويكفيك من هذا الظلم إعطاء وعد بلفور للصهاينة وإعطاء أرضنا لمحتل غاصب ليس له حق في فلسطين، لا جنسا ولا دينا ولا أرضا، فأجناسهم مختلفة وألوانهم متعددة ولغاتهم متفرقة، ولا دينا لأن اليهود في بلادنا موجودون ويسكنون معنا كشعب فلسطيني بمسلميه ومسيحييه، ويرفضون ما تفعله الصهيونية، وقد جاء لفلسطين حاخامات يهودية نفت أن تكون فلسطين موعود الله لليهود ولا أرضا لهم، فالأرض نسكنها نحن وأصلها لنا، ولم نغتصبها من أحد، بل نشأنا فيها وأجدادنا عاشوا وماتوا عليها، فالأرض زرعناها بأيدينا وبنيناها جيلا عن جيل، فكيف يكون لمحتل صهيوني غاصب حق فيها؟ إننا أيها السادة لا نسعى إلا للحرية والعودة لأراضينا المحتلة التي تم احتلالها على يد الصهاينة في عام 1948 و1967، فنحن نريد أرضنا ونريد حريتنا، ونريد أن نعيد لشعبنا كرامته بأخذ حقه من الظالمين الصهاينة الذين منذ احتلالهم لنا في عام 1948 لم يمارسوا سوى القتل والتشريد والتهجير والدمار والمجازر وقتل الأطفال والتجويع والحصار والبطش على شعبنا وأمتنا، ولذلك نحن نريد حرية سلبوها منا، ونريد أرضا اغتصبوها ظلما وعدوانا وكرها وهجرونا منها قصرا بالقتل والمجازر، ولذلك نحن لا نزال وسنبقى ندافع عن فلسطين وعن شعبنا، ونقولها وبكل صراحة وبكل يقين أننا لن نعترف بإسرائيل ولن نعترف بوجودهم على أرضنا، ومن هنا ندعوهم إلى أن يعودوا من حيث جاءوا لينتشر السلام في العالم كله، ففلسطين قضية مركزية ومحورية في هذه الأمة بل في العالم أجمع. أصدقائي الطلبة، السادة الحضور، إن فلسطين الآن تتعرض لأكبر ظلم وانتهاك للإنسانية والحياة البشرية، فانظروا إلى حال الأسرى وهم الآن في السجون الصهيونية يتعرضون للقمع والتنكيل، ويمنعون من زيارات أهليهم وذويهم، ويمنعون من العلاج وأبسط حقوق الحياة. إن الأسرى الآن يتعرضون للموت البطيء والانتهاك الصريح لحياتهم الإنسانية، ولو نظرتم إلى الأسرى الذين يخرجون من سجونهم وزنازينهم يخرجون كأنهم جثث هامدة، فأي إنسانية وأي حقوق تزعمها الصهيونية المحتلة أو صهيونية الجماعات الضاغطة عندكم في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية؟ لقد أعدموا معاني الإنسانية وأعدموا حقوق الإنسان في فلسطين، في بلاد تدعي الحرية والدفاع عن حقوق الإنسان. ولم يكتفي هذا الاحتلال الصهيوني الغاصب بالإنسان فحسب، بل لقد جرفوا الأشجار ودمروا الأحجار وهدموا البيوت على رؤوس ساكنيها، والآن يغتصبون الأراضي في الضفة الغربية والقدس ويفسدون في الأرض بغير وجه حق. أتعلمون لماذا؟ لأن خلفهم من يدعمهم، وهي الحكومة الأمريكية، وهي من تعطيهم الضوء الأخضر تحت سياسة غربية لتنفيذ الانتهاكات بحقنا. ولأن الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية كحكومة لا تستطيع لجم هذا الكيان الصهيوني عن تنفيذ مخططاته الغاصبة لفلسطين وشعبها وأرضها. وهنا تجد كيف يقوم الاحتلال الصهيوني بإقامة جدار الفصل العنصري على أراضينا، ويهدم البيوت التي يسكنها الفلسطينيون في هذه الأماكن، ويفصلون بين الأهل وبين العائلات والآباء والأبناء والأمهات، بل ويأخذون الأراضي الزراعية التي يأكل منها الفلسطينيون كشجر الزيتون والبرتقال وغيرها. أيها السادة، أيها الحضور الكريم، انظروا إلى القضية المؤرقة التي تؤرق جميع شعب فلسطين في الداخل والخارج، وهي قضية اللاجئين الفلسطينيين. إن القضية الأبرز في ثوابتنا الفلسطينية هي قضية اللاجئين، وحق العودة لهم واجب علينا، فلقد أصبح شعبنا مشردا بعد الظلم الصهيوني الذي وقع عليهم، بعد المجازر الصهيونية والإبادة الجماعية منذ حرب 1948 و1967، واليوم هجر فيها اللاجئون وشردوا للمرة الثانية والثالثة، وغرقوا في البحر بحثا عن مكان آمن لإيوائهم بسبب القتل والظلم الواقع عليهم في سوريا على أيدي النظام السوري، لأنهم ممنوعون من العودة لبلادهم فلسطين. فإن عدد اللاجئين في مخيمات اللجوء والشتات يزيد عددهم عن 6 مليون فلسطيني لاجئ، وها هم الآن يتعرضون لأشد الظلم، ولذلك ينبغي أن نكون منصفين لهم وأن نعيدهم لأرضهم التي أخرجوا منها بغير حق بسبب الاحتلال الصهيوني البغيض. أصدقائي الطلبة، الحضور الكريم، اليوم وإذ تزعم القوى العالمية أنها تسعى لتحقيق العدل والسلام والحرية للمجتمعات، نرى أن الواقع يثبت زيف ادعائها، وأنها تسعى وراء مصالحها، بل وتدعم الطرف الصهيوني على الطرف الفلسطيني وتكيل بمكيالين حسب المصلحة الصهيونية. وهنا نقف لنذكركم، أليست الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية تسعى لنشر الديمقراطية والعدالة والسلام والحرية؟ أليست من تدعي حق الإنسان في العيش الكريم؟ أليس هذا هو المعلن؟ ونحن أمام هذا الادعاء نناقش ما الذي حققته هذه الحكومة الأمريكية. أولاً، حققت أنها أعطت كامل الحرية للكيان الصهيوني للقتل والدمار في غزة في 3 حروب بعد 2006 فقط، بل وأعطت الكيان الصهيوني كامل الحرية في انتهاك القانون الدولي لحقوق الإنسان. ثالثاً، أعطت حرية البطش والقتل في أي دولة عربية، فقصفت السودان وسوريا وقتلت الجنود المصريين على الحدود، واستهدفت لبنان بحرب على الأبرياء والمدنيين، بل وقتلت وحاولت قتل قيادات فلسطينية تاريخية في تونس والأردن، وانتهكت كافة الأعراف الدولية. أيها الحضور الكريم، هل تريدون دليلا عمليا لذلك؟ انظروا إلى الديمقراطية التي حدثت في فلسطين بالانتخابات التشريعية في عام 2006، واعترف العالم كله بنزاهتها، حيث قال الرئيس الأمريكي الأسبق جيمي كارتر إن الانتخابات الفلسطينية لم نشهد بنزاهتها في الوطن العربي بأكمله. ماذا فعل الكيان الصهيوني والدول الغربية والولايات المتحدة الأمريكية بها؟ لم يعترفوا بها وأنكروها، ولم يتوقف الأمر على هذا، بل قاطعوها، ولم يعترفوا بشرعية الحكومة المنبثقة عن هذه الانتخابات، فقطعوا الدعم عنها وطالبوها لكي يعترفوا بها أن تعترف بحق الكيان الصهيوني بالوجود على أرض فلسطين، وبدأوا بفرض الشروط على الشعب الفلسطيني، ولم يكتفوا بذلك، بل عاقبوا الشعب الفلسطيني بأكمله على ديمقراطيته واختياره من يمثله. فلقد وصل الأمر لظلم عظيم. أولاً، قطعوا الرواتب عن الموظفين وأوقفوا الدعم كي يفشلوا تجربة الديمقراطية بفلسطين. ثانياً، اعتقلوا نواب المجلس التشريعي الفلسطيني المنتخبين شرعياً، والذي يجرم القانون الدولي أي تعرض لهم، فما بالكم وهم الآن معتقلون وأسرى عندهم. وأبرز من تم اعتقالهم من هؤلاء النواب رئيس المجلس التشريعي الدكتور عزيز الدويك. ثالثاً، لقد اغتالوا الوزراء واعتقلوهم ومنعوهم من التحرك لأداء عملهم. رابعاً، لقد فرضوا حصاراً على غزة في أكبر مأساة إنسانية في تاريخ البشرية جمعاء، ففرضوا حصاراً خانقاً مشدداً لم يشهد التاريخ له مثيلاً، فحاصروا غزة وأغلقوا المعابر التجارية والمعابر الإنسانية، ومنعوا دخول الدواء والطعام والمواد الحياتية كمواد البناء والصناعة والبنى التحتية والمواد البترولية. ولقد شاركهم في ذلك بعض الأنظمة العربية للأسف في بداية الأمر، كالنظام المصري البائد نظام مبارك، فأغلقوا المعابر، أغلقوا معبر رفح حتى مات الناس في غزة على المعابر وهم لا يجدون دواء ولا غذاء، وقطعوا الكهرباء عن غزة وعن مستشفياتها، فمات المرضى وهم على سرر العلاج وفي البيوت من أجل أنهم لا يجدون الكهرباء التي يشغل أجهزة العلاج، وتوقفت السيارات والمستشفيات وكل الخدمات الإنسانية. خامساً، لقد استخدموا الخيار العسكري فمارسوا الإرهاب والعدوان بكافة أصنافه في 2006 ضد غزة لإسقاط الحكومة الفلسطينية المنتخبة ومعاقبة الشعب على اختياراته، ثم شنوا عدوانا على غزة عام 2008 و2009 فاستهدفوا الحجر والشجر والبشر ولم يبقوا شيئا إلا واستهدفوه، فقد قصفوا غزة بآلاف الأطنان من الصواريخ والمتفجرات التي لم تستخدم في الحروب مع دول عظمى. فما بالكم أن تتخيلوا كيف ضربت غزة التي لا تتجاوز مساحتها 360 كيلومتر بهذه الكمية من المتفجرات. وقد قصفوا البيوت والمستشفيات والوزارات والمؤسسات التشريعية المنتخبة والسجون والمدارس، وقتلوا عائلات بأكملها بأطفالها ونسائها، وقصفوا بيوتا آمنة مدنية. لكم أن تنظروا كيف استهدفوا المدارس التي كان يلجأ إليها الناس، وهي مدارس وكالة الأونروا المدعومة من الأمم المتحدة. كان الناس يذهب لهذه المدارس ليحتموا بها من القصف الصهيوني الغاشم. ومع هذا كله لم نجد مستشفيات تستوعب الجرحى والمصابين والشهداء، بل إن النظام المصري البائد نظام حسني مبارك لم يفتح المعبر وبقي مغلقا حتى مات الجرحى في المستشفيات وهم لا يجدون علاجا ولا غذاء ولا سيارات إسعاف لتسعفهم. بعد قصفهم واستهدافهم بأسلحة محرمة دوليا كالفسفور الأبيض. ثم أيها الأحبة، شنوا عدوانا ظالما في عام 2012 على غزة بعد الثورات العربية، واستهدفوا فيها الصحافة والإعلام، وقتلوا الصحفيين حرقا بالقصف في سيارات الصحافة ومنازل المدنيين، وعائلة الدلو خير شاهد على هذا. وأخيرا، الحصار السياسي. نعم، إنه حصار من نوع خاص، حصار سياسي تعرضت له الشرعية الفلسطينية والحكومة الفلسطينية المنتخبة بقيادة رئيس الوزراء إسماعيل هنية، ومنعت من السفر والتواصل مع الحكومات، وفرض عليها طرق لعدم إفسادها شرعية دولية، بل ومنعت من طرح ملف القضية الفلسطينية في المحافل الدولية من أجل تقرير مصير الشعب الفلسطيني وتحديد أولوياته المطلوبة عربيا وإقليميا ودوليا. ومنع رئيس الوزراء والوزراء من السفر قرابة ال5 سنوات، بل وتم محاولة اختيار رئيس الوزراء إسماعيل هنية على معبر رفح. وانظروا إلى هذا الحصار، وأي حصار نتكلم عنه بعد هذا. انظروا إلى القدس. أيها السادة، أيها الكرام، اليوم أصبح أهالي القدس يتعرضون لخطر داهم من الاحتلال الصهيوني، فأصبحت بيوتهم تهدم فوق رؤوسهم ولا يجدون بديلا، ويمنعون من ترميم بيوتهم، وكل هذا من أجل إجبارهم على ترك بيوتهم ومنازلهم في القدس لتكون خالية من الفلسطينيين الذين ولدوا فيها وعاشوا فيها، كي يفرضوا طرقا أمنيا حولها للمغتصبين ويقسموها زمنيا ومكانيا لهم كما يشاءون، بل ويريدون أن يغيروا ملامح القدس وأحيائها وأسمائها لكي يثبتوا أنها لهم، ويقتحموا المسجد الأقصى وباحاته، والمسلمون يصلون ويعبدون الله فيه، ويقومون بالحفرية تحت المسجد الأقصى لهدمه، وهو بيت عبادة للمسلمين، ويمنعون الناس من الصلاة في المسجد الأقصى إلا حسب قوانينهم الظالمة التي لا تراعي الحق عبادة ولا حق إنسانية ولا يحقق عدلا ولا سلاما. أيها السادة، أيها الكرام، إن الثورات العربية وأثرها على فلسطين أمر عظيم. إن فلسطين بقدسيتها ووجدانها داخل القلب العربي والإسلامي شكلت الرافعة الأساسية لهذه الثورات، حتى أصبحت أيوة، السلام عليكم. نعم. إن فلسطين بقدسيتها ووجدانها داخل القلب العربي والإسلامي شكلت الرافعة الأساسية لهذه الثورات، حتى أصبحت الثورات العربية تنادي بشعار الشعب يريد تحرير فلسطين، فانتقلت فلسطين من وجدان محدود الأفق إلى قلب كل أحرار العالم بعد هذه الثورات العربية. فشعب فلسطين فرح جدا بهذه الثورات التي أعادت الوحدة للروح العربية والإسلامية
Well, we almost made it with him, so it's great. Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Abdul Maugud.
Thank you. Thank you. It is important to keep the time difference between here and Palestine. It's almost 2 o'clock a.m. over there now. So he was waiting all this for to share this with you.
بعد السلام. أعتذر يا دكتور لأن الكهرباء هذه يعني هذا هو من الحصار انقطاع اتجاه الكهرباء على الدوام.
He's saying because of that, that's under siege, the electricity down. So he's not going to be able to complete it. أنا يعني كملت 1 2 3 4 لقيت حضرتك يعني يفضل معانا لو سمعت. دلوقتي عبد الموجود هيبدأ إن شاء الله. سامعني؟
نعم. أين يا دكتورة؟
أنا يعني كملت الترجمة لغاية 1 2 3 4 اللي احنا كنا فيها.
نعم.
يعني كده خلصوها خلاص ودلوقتي عبد الموجود هيبدأ إن شاء الله.
توكل على الله، مفيش مشكلة إن شاء الله.
أنت معانا.
نعم.
So he is
وعليكم
giving
السلام.
is giving us a living example of what is happening in Gaza under siege. Electricity was cut off, and once electricity is cut off in Gaza or in Egypt or any other part of the world, the internet is not working. So hopefully that he will be able to come back and enjoy your questions. Let me share with you my personal journey within the spirit of Malcolm X and the spirit of the oppressed people in Palestine. I will share a personal story. When I was in the age of most of you, I was around 25 years of age. I graduated at the age of 22 from the School of Arts English department. And then I got a scholarship to study for master's and PhD in the United States of America. It was the first time for me to leave Egypt. I didn't leave Egypt before, so it was really new experience for me to come to America. Did I suffer from a cultural shock? No, I didn't. Why? Because I came from a city called Luxor. And Luxor is a tourist city. So we were living really with tourists almost all the time. So it was not really a big of a change. But let me be honest with you. Before I came, I didn't know almost nothing about the African American experience in America. I was shocked when I saw African Americans living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I didn't expect that this is a possibility in America. I expected the America that was given to me in the Egyptian TV is white America, not black America at all. The only African American that I came to know was Muhammad Ali Clay, the boxer. And we used to spend night because of the time difference between Egypt and America. If the match is here around 8 o'clock, it's over there around 3 o'clock a.m. We used to spend all night and we used to support Muhammad Ali Clay blindly because we associated ourselves with Muhammad Ali Clay as Egyptians and Egypt in Africa. So that was really the first thing shocking for me. I was driving in Pittsburgh and I got lost. So I pulled the window down and I asked the young man, a young boy in fact, I asked him, do you know how can I get to Monroe? Young boy looked at me and it seems he really got shocked. He didn't answer me right away, but he asked me a very telling question. He said, are you white or black?
He looked at me, did not find the white guy that he sees. But he looked at me, didn't find the black guy either. That was shocking question for me. I said, whatever you like, but just tell me how to get to Monroeville, because that was I was looking for. So those shocking experience was really new to me. Another shocking experience is the lack of knowledge. And I'm trying to be polite here. I would like to call it ignorance of Islam and the Muslim world. The people I met on campus, they just didn't know anything about Islam or Muslims. Even one of them asked, are you from Egypt? Yes. Oh, do you still ride camels to work? I was shocked. I said, what's going on? I'm still on the planet Earth, or I'm somewhere else. I remember in the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh, the reason why I'm telling this is what is happening right after. In the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh, we invited a group of students from Seton Hill University in Greensburg area, a white suburb area. And when the students came in, we had a Coke machine. And one of the students said, oh, thank God, they drink the same drinks we drink. So these things send a message to me. Oh, there is a huge difference. There is a gap. There is a misunderstanding between us and them. What is the alternative? I was offered one alternative, and it is called melting pot alternative. If you're here, you mix with us, you become like us, you're out of here. I honestly, to be honest with you, I didn't like the melting pot. So I tried to develop another alternative. And the other alternative, I call it the salad bar. We're still in the kitchen. So away from the melting pot where we all need to look alike, speak alike, act alike, dance alike, to being different but enjoy the difference. And this is something that I learned from Malcolm X himself. A salad bar where difference is celebrated, where we can have different languages, different races, but we're still one humanity. We're all human beings. That is the first lesson I learned in my experience. I came to study master's and PhD in linguistics. After these experiences in Pittsburgh, I decided to change my major. I went to the cultural studies, and I wrote my PhD on the relationship, the complicated relationship, or the complex relationship between Muslims and Europeans, or Islam and Europe, and how to get away from this us versus them dichotomy. I was really interested. I believed in one humanity. And I said, we're all one humanity. We're all human beings. We feel alike. When we get sick, we have similar feelings. When we get wounded, blood comes out. All of us. Does not matter what language you have or what color you have. All of us are one human beings. And that controlled my attitude towards life. I started looking different after I started working on my dissertation, and I was very much interested in a third alternative. It does not have to be us versus them. It can be both of us. And that's why when I went back to Egypt and I started teaching, that was my way of teaching Egyptian students English literature. So I used to teach through the internet, have students in Egypt interact with the students in America. We teach the same course. I and another professor by the name of Francis Leib. Our students will get together. At that time, Facebook was not there. It was 2001 or 2. It was not popular. If it existed, I think it existed later, a couple of years later. But we were having this Yahoo Messenger. And students would come, rent a cafe, internet cafe in Egypt, and students here in America will go to the computer lab, and you can imagine the difference between a cafe and the lab, and they would interact for an hour, 2 hours. Students at the very beginning were fearful of one another. I remember a young female student came to me and said, oh, why should we talk to them? They hate us. I said, how do you know? Don't you see what the media is saying? It was right after 9/11. And when I was here on 9/11, and the newspaper started saying, why do they hate us? I went back to Egypt, I found Egyptian newspaper saying, why do they hate us? And that moment was very critical moment in my career and my academic career. So I started saying, there is not really, it is not hate problem, it's a misunderstanding problem. And I think if we can get to know one another more, we will be able to appreciate. My students, to be honest with you, did not believe me. And they expected me to be an American Asian, trying to Americanize the Egyptian students. It took them just a few weeks. They started developing relationships. Even some of them started inviting each other to come and visit. I remember one female student, she was having her wedding right after graduation, and she invited the American friends. That tells me we're one humanity. Very much so. But we need to be able to talk to one another. When you see someone who's different, don't be fearful of that person. Try to approach that person in the right way, and I think you will be able to get to know. I conclude by the following. What to do? Where to go from this us versus them dichotomy. After the Egyptian revolution took place, I decided to go into politics out of necessity. I felt that I lived in the two worlds, and I felt the need to build the bridges of understanding between Egypt, the Arabs, the Muslim world, and the European world and America. So I did join the election in the parliament. I won the election. When I went to the Egyptian parliament, I joined the Foreign Relations Committee. And I told them, here I am willing to give the rest of my life to build the bridges of understanding. And I see the suspicion everywhere I go. I see the suspicion in Egypt, in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, from America, from the Western world. People there say they want to control us. And I see the suspicion here in America, here in Europe, they say they want to kill us. It's you, young leaders, who can put an end to this misunderstanding, to this suspicion. I am happy to see many young Muslim ladies here. Please, live Islam. Share Islam. Make your friends understand what you are and what you stand for. And I end my presentation with the following. There are two complexes we're suffering from: inferiority complex and superiority complex. And unless we can get rid of these two complexes, it will be very difficult for us to build a better world based on freedom, justice, and peace for all. That is the challenge. The challenge from people in Egypt, and I keep telling these people in Egypt, in Somalia, in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, we have to get rid of this inferiority complex. We're not inferior. We're all equal. Remember the spirit of Malcolm X. We're all equal. We're all human beings. And I also say to white America and the Europeans, get rid of the superiority complex. No one is superior to any other human being other than by good attitudes, by your virtues, not by the color of your skin that was given to you, not by the language you speak. I may speak English with an Egyptian accent, and you speak English with an American accent. They're both of them accents anyway at the end of the day. But we can communicate together. I believe in one humanity for all of us, and I believe we can do it together. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Osama.